Some context for the chatters earlier talking about the Z meme. Okay, we'll show it in a second. We'll get to it in a second. Curious if you would say this for EU too towards America. What do you mean? Do you think there would be any difference in the West's response at the moment if Ukraine was in NATO? If Ukraine, in the immediate aftermath of the dissolution of the USSR, or leading up to the rebuilding era of Russia, was able to join NATO, then that would be an entirely separate problem. Like, that would be an entirely separate outcome. But they lost their fucking... It was a wrap. It was not going to happen. It was not going to happen once Russia was able to build its power back militarily and build its power back in the energy sector and become like a trade partner to many international... to the European Union and everywhere else. Countries that have power in Europe, war in Ukraine is great. The German economy relies on an underclass of cheap labor from Balkan states and immigrants from Turkey, Poland, and Syria. They don't feel threatened because of NATO. Only small non-NATO members care. That wasn't the question that was asked, though. Did I misunderstand the question? The people of Ukraine want liberation from Russia. The people of Ukraine before that wanted protection from Russia. But the unfortunate reality is it doesn't matter. Okay? It doesn't matter. When you are a smaller nation, relatively speaking, stuck between and is seen as a strategic interest of a much larger economic superpower or a regional superpower, okay? I'm not going to say like it's a global superpower, especially one with 6,000 nukes. There is no personal sovereignty. There is only a complicated negotiation process between competing Western interests and competing Eastern interests, trying to actively and deliberately build your natural natural resource extraction sector by getting economic help from the Western world or from Russia to, at the very least, have some kind of fucking bargaining power at the table, and constantly pitting those two interests against one another until you have some kind of autonomy and some kind of sovereignty. Okay? People hear you for 10 hours a day talk about material analysis of capitalism and how liberal values aren't relevant to its functions and forget everything they learned about heartless corpos when it's about foreign policy. The heck? It's because foreign policy is one front that American media operates in unison and champions this cause. And they very effectively vilify anyone that actually steps outside of the boundaries of the liberal worldview. Okay? Just like I punish unsubscribed people at the top of the hour with a 60-second ad break, where I serve them a 60-second ad break. But if they are subscribed, and you can be too, for $5, but if you don't have $5 for free with a Twitch Prime, then you won't get punished with the top of the hour ad break. Another way is if you're lucky and you get gifted a sub. But here's the 1-minute ad break now. No, strategic ambiguity has been done with the USSR, just like with China and Taiwan in the past. Russia is acting outside of the rule books, not us. Fox is molding that we might stop starving kids in Cuba and Venezuela. Oh, I love this. I love this. The funniest part about this has been like, you know, reconsidering our way. We're going to read the Thomas Friedman article in a second. But yeah, what else did I have about the John Mersheimer take? I mean, I guess we have to finish it,
Who
and we
really
haven't yet.
cares more about this situation? The Russians?
Venezuelan here. I emigrated as well, but I understand the damage and misery that the sanctions on my country caused to the people that haven't been able to leave, even if I despise Maduro. Exactly. This has nothing to do with fucking Maduro and everything to do with what our responsibility is to the safety and security and livelihood of human beings living in fucking Venezuela. You cannot use the Venezuelan people and starve them as a fucking political pawn with the hopes that like your dumbass puppet is gonna end up overthrowing the Maduro regime. Okay, it's disgusting. It is morally abhorrent, and I completely oppose all of that. Okay, disgusting. How do you oust dictatorships then? When have we done? Has that worked? In instances where we have actually directly funded and funneled guns and have whipped up a fucking frenzy in like paramilitaries, right-wing paramilitaries, you know what ends up happening? Neoliberal economics of austerity and destruction. But before that, genocide, like active genocide done by people that we have trained. Our military is trained with our guns. What the fuck are you talking about? Joe ends the drone war, withdrew from Afghanistan, most likely will ease sanctions on Venezuela, new Iran nuclear deal. Seems like a pretty solid record. Dog, I fucking ride or die with Brandon about withdrawing from Afghanistan. The Venezuelan sanctions being eased is a good thing overall. It angers me that it has continued for this long. And also, again, Iran denuclearization agreement was good. Wished we would ease on the sanctions in the lead up to it, but we didn't. We actually continued the Trump era sanctions. Okay.
Or the Americans? The Americans do not care that much about Ukraine. The Americans have made it clear they are not even willing to fight and die for Ukraine. So it's not that important to us. For the Russians, they have made it clear it's an existential threat. So the balance of...
I mean, part of the reason why is because it's, nuclear war. That's the reason why Americans are not going to fight and die for Ukraine. Possibly because, a lot of Americans would die. So I guess technically it's true. You know what I mean? It's like technically true in the sense that, they're not willing to fucking die in a nuclear holocaust.
Resolve, I believe, favors them. So as we walk up the escalation ladder moving forward, my guess, and it's just my guess, is that the Russians will prevail, not the Americans, and the Russians will prevail because the balance of resolve favors them.
Pre-invasion, it's the West's fault. Post-invasion, well, the West doesn't actually care, lol. It absolutely was the West's fault, as well as Russia, but the West is at fault here. I don't know why you don't recognize this. Any kind of utilitarian approach to this circumstance revolves around minimizing active casualties, okay? And if you want to take the approach, I've already said there were Western leaders that I was on board with, people that I fucking despise. Macron, Germany, like these countries have actively tried to put together ceasefire and peaceful neutralization agreements. No, we aren't. We have fucked up a lot of stuff on this planet. This one was not on us. No, once the invasion occurred, majority, if not the overwhelming majority of blame is still on Russia. Okay? The overwhelming blame is still on Russia. Of course, they're the ones who are invading. That much is clear. I hope you understand that. I have talked about it regularly, non-fucking stop, for the past couple of weeks now. Okay? But if you think that the West is completely absolved of any sort of guilt, you are doing the exact same thing that we hear from supposedly quote-unquote progressives on Twitter and in our media. Okay? The very same people that are now using Ukrainian blood to actively wash their hands of the bloodshed that America has done time and time again. Oh, now there's a different bad guy, dude. Now there's a different bad guy at play. Like, oh, finally, like, we're not at fault. Come on, right? Never. It's a good thing that we're doing. It's a good thing. We should continue. We should continue the fucking, war actively. We should continue the war in Ukraine, and we'll keep giving them guns, and it's attrition, and maybe eventually, like, Russia will get destabilized. Maybe eventually, like, Russia will say, all right, fuck it, we're going home. They won't escalate the conflict. They won't. Dude, you literally have naked pics on Instagram. Hee hee. Okay. So, anyway. Do you think if the Americans stop the sanctions on Iran, they will go automatically liberal/pro-West, given that they have an open-minded society? I don't know. You're saying a lot of words there, like liberal, pro-West. Like, I think there's a lot of young Iranians who fucking despise America, but are still progressive ultimately. The issue is, of course, when you are dealing with a larger imperialist force that is destroying your country, starving it out, and crippling it with sanctions, then you're too busy focusing on that instead of trying to fucking change your own country's regime.
Now, the question is, who loses this war? I think it doesn't matter much to the United States if we lose, in the sense that the Russians prevail in Ukraine. I think the real losers in this war are the Ukrainians. And I think what's happening.
So you're against military aid to Ukraine? I don't get it. I think originally, okay, there's two separate points of view here. Okay, you have, again, people who believe Russia wants to restore the Russian Empire. It's Duginist thought. Like, Russia just wants to restore Russian Empire or the USSR, and that's why they're going to take over Ukraine no matter what. But they haven't until 2014, when they took Crimea, and they had not done anything leading up to that. But, like, there was a active triggering event that America certainly was involved with, even though the pro-Russian puppet was absolutely a fucking dogshit, corrupt, brutal leader regardless, okay? But they want to take over Ukraine. They want to take over Ukraine. They want to take over the entirety of Ukraine no matter what. They want to take over the entirety of Georgia no matter what. They want to rebuild the Russian Empire no matter what, right? And then the other idea is that no, Russia is doing this. Russia, or Putin might personally try to advocate for this war by whipping up nationalistic fervor, but the ultimate goals that they have are what they've done: actively engage Georgia and Ukraine, which they have always considered to be a red line for NATO involvement and Western influence. To be in territorial disputes, so they can never join NATO, because Article 5 would dictate that a country that is in war has to be defended by the rest of the NATO nations, and the rest of the NATO nations have nuclear weapons, and therefore it'd be nuclear holocaust. Okay? These are the two competing thoughts. My point is, even if they absolutely just want to take over the entirety of Ukraine, they want to take over the entirety of Ukraine, okay? There is no reason not to capitulate and actually fucking make concessions to some of the demands that Russia is making in an effort to try to stop. It's not that hard to understand Putin's motives. Just read his own words. I already acknowledged it. That sure sounds like appeasement. Dude, I hate this baby-brained fucking take. Yes, dude, it's appeasement. Of course it's appeasement. We live in a post-nuclear world. The alternative of appeasement is war. We are already doing appeasement. We aren't even fucking we're not fighting Russia. We're not instituting a no-fly zone. We're not bringing Ukraine into NATO. We were never going to do that regardless because of the events that are happening currently and the likelihood that they would happen if we were to ever invite Ukraine into NATO. Okay? We are living in a nuclear war. The opposite of appeasement is nuclear holocaust. The opposite of appeasement is active war between two countries with nuclear warheads. The opposite of appeasement is something that Joe Biden understands, even with his rotting fucking brain. But for some reason, Twitch chatters do not. Are you in a bunker? Are you tweeting at me from your fucking New Zealand bunker, dude? Is this Peter Thiel's New Zealand bunker talking? Because if you're not, then shut the fuck up. Unless you just are suicidal and don't care that nuclear warheads start flying, and you think you're going to be able to, use your bottle caps that you stashed away for this opportunity. I feel like you don't understand how much they really pushed to never appease in high school history class here. It doesn't matter how much they pushed the appeasement stuff in high school. What matters is every single human being in here, after a certain point, after a certain amount of times that I fucking, mention this over and over again, can comprehend that World War II is different than World War III because World War II was conventional weapons. World War III is not going to be fought with conventional weapons. World War III is going to be fought with nukes. Okay, that is the two competing theories on nuclearization as a peace-bringing operation and nuclearization as the mutually assured destruction, which will ultimately, allow conflicts like this, smaller conflicts like this, to continue. Okay? How far do civilian deaths go until you think it's okay to engage war with Russia? There is no amount of civilian deaths that not me, okay, not me personally, that America is willing to fucking concede to, because no one cares. Hopefully you will understand that even if Russia were to kill like half the fucking Ukrainian population, America is not going to risk nuclear war. Okay? The Western world is not going to risk nuclear war. I personally care about the lives of Ukrainians. That's why we raise money for Ukrainians. Okay? Especially Ukrainians that are trying to evacuate, Ukrainian civilians, Ukrainian workers. I do care about them. But caring and sharing our thoughts and our feelings is as far as we can go in this situation. But if we're talking about statecraft, if we're talking about what the American state could do in this situation, they have two options. They can keep fucking pumping Ukraine full of guns and say, hey, look, your javelins have been super successful in absolutely shredding Russian tanks thus far. Like, an incredible amount of fucking Russian tanks have been destroyed so far. Just keep it up. Just keep it up. You'll be able to maybe one day, with our sanctions as well on the side, hopefully be able to purge the Russian forces, which I doubt. I've said this before, I will say it again. NATO says they won't get involved due to the nuke issue, but on the other hand, they say they will fight to defend every inch of NATO. Really, come on, the nukes are not the issue. What? They say they'll defend every inch of NATO because they have nukes too. And Russia knows they have nukes as well. That's the point of NATO. If enough civilian deaths happen, Europe will join the war. I don't think you understand how angry people are here. Okay. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Europe will join the war, and Putin will be like, all right, well, I can't win this war with conventional weapons. Time to fucking release. Let's do it. Hit the button. GG's. I'll stream it. Don't worry, boys. When the nukes are flying, I'm not going to survive it. I'll tank the fucking nukes. Who cares, at that point? I don't like these takes either. This is fucking stupid, okay? Union pay has already been used in Ukraine. Union pay is already being used in the United States of America. Union pay, China's union pay has already been active all around the country. It's still all around the world. It's like one of the fucking largest payment processors after, if not, it might even be larger than fucking Visa, not Visa and MasterCard together. So the idea that like, oh man, fucking after Visa and MasterCard pulled out of Russia, which from what I understand, Visa and MasterCard only pulled out of international transactions in Russia and are still, these are the people that like are actively in support of Russia, which I think is like silly as well. Anyway, it's a strange fucking take. You're so parasocial. You want your last moments to be with chat one last mall? Oh, 100%. In 2015, the Union Pay overtook Visa and MasterCard in total value of payments made by customers and became the largest card payment processing organization. Like, these people use anything and everything they can. Richard Medhurst is not actively supporting Russia. Please be careful with such an accusation. I mean, isn't this like one of those fucking Jimmy Dore type dudes? I don't know. Maybe he's not. I apologize. Rather than shun Russia, the PM of Pakistan, another nuclear power, visited Moscow and bought 2 million tons of wheat and natural gas after meeting Putin. Whatever you think of Russia, you cannot deny the world is actually not on agreement in Ukraine. I know corporate media wants you to think that the West equals the whole world, but that's clearly not what's going on. There's a global realignment happening. There are like 3 or 4 people, I think, with like some level of prominence that are doing a little bit of maybe a little bit of propaganda on the Russian side. Not that like claim you want the internet culture of L's and W's to end, yet you want to stream a nuclear apocalypse just to flex your W on chat one last time, the hypocritical left. No, it's because like this is what I enjoy doing. That's it. And obviously I would want to do obviously what I would like to do what I like doing in my last moments. But anyway, this is wrong. This analysis is wrong. The West is shooting itself in the foot. It's not punishing Russia. It's bringing Eurasia and Global South closer together. Like, I'm willing to bet that this person's assessment of American imperialism is probably fucking super on the money. Okay. A lot of these people are like that. And he's right. American imperialism does actually actively bring the Global South together, or is part of the reason why the Sino-Soviet relations have been repaired, right? Seemingly. But he can't twist that back to Russia doing an act of imperialism will also, galvanize the Baltic states and make their attitudes completely justified, make their attitudes against Russia completely justifiable. Okay? Regarding sending jets to backfill Polish jets, we are working through some pretty complicated logistics on that front, including how we would backfill, because returning new planes and transferring serious weapon systems often take years to do from the United States. Yeah. Okay. What stupid sanctions the West put on us? That's right. Make life difficult for regular people. Yes, I am from Russia. Feel for you, brother. And feel for the Ukrainian people as well. It's a really fucking horrible situation because...
For joining us on a Sunday night.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe.
Insane.
In the city of Yekaterinburg, police used force in their attempt to close the Pandora's box of war. Some 5,000 arrests were reported across Russia yesterday, not just here in the Ural Mountains, but across 49 cities, which suggests that domestic opposition to a conflict still in its infancy will be harder than usual to contain.
Обними, если против войны.
Hug me if you are against the war, reads this TikTok post from Moscow on the first day of the invasion. Though TikTok, which is Chinese-owned, has now blocked any new Russian content after the Kremlin outlawed what it calls fake news. For his own safety, we've also blurred the identity of this influencer, who has since deleted his TikTok post.
Oh, good. No one will ever know who the influencer was if you blurred his face. You know, that made a very popular viral TikTok that literally led the Russian government to actually fucking, ban TikTok.
I want to deliver one thing to you. None of people I personally talked to, literally none of my friends and none of people I personally talked to supported today's events. Every single person I know is against the violence and against the crime which is happening right now.
Many Russian postings aimed against the Ukrainian government appeared to come from a shared script.
За время войны погибли сотни невинных детей, и на данный момент обстрел мирных жителей продолжается. Мы не хотим установки новых мемориалов и не можем допустить гибели невинных детей.
Russian school teachers have been issued with this new guidance on what to tell their teenage pupils about the so-called nightmare of genocide in Ukraine, which is that the war is not a war, but a special peacekeeping operation to, quotes, denazify the country.
We want to see demilitarized Ukraine. We want to see Ukraine free from Nazi ideology and Nazi elements.
Are Russians being persuaded by state propaganda?
Now that the authoritarian government has flipped a switch and become totalitarian overnight.
Right always talks about Castro and Soviet leaders, but never talks about dictators like Augusto Pinochet, Fulgencio Batista, Ferdinand Marcos, who were all U.S. backed. Well, they did talk about it when it actually mattered. And more importantly than talking about it, they actually offered full-blown material support to those leaders. You can try to erase that history, but what you can't erase is, of course, the Wall Street Journal editorial board, and its full-throated, full-throated defense of Pinochet's regime, which, of course, they also continued when Jair Bolsonaro became the leader of Brazil. So, they are always on the wrong side of history, so it doesn't matter.
It makes polling even more difficult. So it's hard to tell.
Julia Ayaf is a fucking psychopath and is literally friends with Richard Spencer. I do not give a fuck about her point of view on Russia's unjustifiable actions. Okay? It's like all the biggest dumbasses are fucking gaining prominence as a consequence of this shit. Okay? Same with you. You think I'm friends with Richard Spencer? Are you insane? My most consistent fucking point of view on this shit is that I despise Nazis no matter where they are. No matter who they are, no matter who they're backing. I want to fucking denazify every country.
It makes polling even more difficult. So it's hard to tell. But I would guess that it would be fairly effective. I have a friend whose mother is from a Siberian village, small Siberian village, and the first coffin came home last week. But the young man's parents said they're not going to talk about it because they're afraid of getting a 15-year sentence for spreading fake news, what is considered fake news about this.
Every war has its propaganda symbols, and for the Russians it's the letter Z, which first appeared on military vehicles and was then adopted by politicians, including Maria Butina, here urging the Russian army to keep going.
Wait. Oh my God. Maria Butina. What? Yo!
Vehicles and was then adopted by politicians, including Maria Butina, here urging the Russian army to...
Bro. Maria Butina? Okay. Maria Butina. God, I want to... All I'm saying is she's thrown it back harder for the Republican Party, okay, then I don't want to make a comparison. She's a Russian spy who famously was able to infiltrate a lot of Republican circles and was like a part of the NRA as a lobbyist. And was incredibly effective at being a spy. She literally was like, bro, Julia Ioffe is a Jew. I don't care, dude. What the fuck? I don't care. She literally has a photo with Richard Spencer. What the fuck are you talking about, dude? I hate this fucking argument where it's like always like, oh, this person is Jewish, so like they've never collaborated with fucking fascists. Oh, okay, got it, dude. I got it. Okay, never mind. I showed you that like the fucking the Israeli businessman, one of the biggest like business oligarchs in Israel, directly was funding the right sector. Bibi Netanyahu is a Holocaust revisionist. Like, shut the fuck up. You say that about Zelensky? No, I always say Zelensky being Jewish has nothing to do with whether or not he's a fucking Nazi or not. He's just not a Nazi. Every single time people bring up Zelensky being Jewish, and that's why it somehow absolves him from, potentially being a Nazi, I tell you all the fucking time that that's not enough. That's not enough. Stephen Miller is a fucking Nazi. And he's Jewish. Anyway. Yeah, she had the guac 5000, okay? Maria Butina, good for her.
Keep going.
Работайте, братья. Мы с вами навсегда.
The Russian gymnast Ivan Kuliak even wore it on his leotard while standing on a podium next to his victorious Ukrainian rival. Russia's defense ministry says the Z stands for victory, celebrated here in Siberia with patriotic pop, from where the true horror of war seems quite deliberately a very long way off.
Jonathan Rugman with that.
Bro, Someone said, imagine advertising war. What country do you live in? Hello? Hello? What do you mean, dude?
Report about the situation inside Russia. Well, earlier I spoke to the former Prime Minister Gordon Brown. He's called for a special international tribunal to be set up to try Vladimir Putin over Russia's aggression. I asked him to explain why.
The Ukraine government has now asked us to do it. They're supporting it. Support is building up in the Baltic states and across Europe. The Foreign Secretary has announced today she's looking at this proposal. And what it does is it fills a gap in international law. At the moment, we could not try President Putin and his coterie for crimes of aggression. That's
Guys, you don't get it. If they want to try Vladimir Putin in an international criminal court, what's to stop him from passing a law in the Duma that dictates that then Russia would be able to nuke The Hague? You know what I mean? And I mean, obviously, that would be fucking disgusting, right? If a country were to literally show and demonstrate how little they give a fuck about international law. I mean, that sounds ridiculous. No country has done that in the year 2002 in the United States of America.
the act of invading Ukraine and continuing to fight a war within Ukraine. The International Criminal Court can look at war crimes and crimes against humanity and genocide, but the first crime, the crime of aggression, does need to be focused upon, and that's what a special tribunal would do.
Until a few weeks ago, the idea of a nuclear strike, a nuclear war between the superpowers seemed completely off the reservation, a madcap stuff. No one talked about it. He has now raised that issue, and however unlikely it still is, without alarming the British public or anyone else for that matter, do you think we should be having a more open and frank discussion about this possibility?
I know it's not right to believe President Putin, but the
Fuck is madcap stuff.
statement of the government is that they would only use nuclear weapons in the event of being under attack as a country or in the event of the existence of the very country being put in jeopardy. Now, none of these conditions apply to any justification for using nuclear weapons in this situation. And I do believe that there are more sensible people than President Putin at the center of the Russian government. And it would be difficult for him to pull the trigger as if on his own. He would be prevented from doing so.
So you obviously met Vladimir Putin when you were Prime Minister, perhaps also as Chancellor of the Exchequer, as did Tony Blair. What was he like?
Well, President Putin only understands one thing: strength. The first time I met him, we were talking about oil, and the same issue arose. He said, "We will sell to the east. We don't need to sell to the west. And unless you meet our terms, we're not going to sell oil and gas to you." And of course, he did continue to sell oil and gas to us, but he was threatening us. And of course, I had to deal with Putin after the Litvinenko assassination. And we knew that Putin was planning other assassinations in Britain. We knew that he was directing them personally. And we knew unless he understood that we would fight back on these things, expelling diplomats,
As an Irishman, don't mind if I laugh at Englishmen talking about war crime tribunals for an invasion, act of occupation, resettlement. What do you mean? What? They would never do that, dude. You're doing whataboutism. Well, he's Scottish, but in general, English people talking about this is still fucking hilarious.
expelling the people who were the spies, tracking those people who were coming into the country to undertake these crimes, and giving security to the people who were at risk. And that happened for years afterwards. And I suppose...
except for Boris Johnson, who was Ottoman. And Ottomans famously never invaded. So...
Our guard had dropped by the time the Salisbury poisonings happened. So he only understands one thing, and that is strength.
But if he only understands strength, and if that was obvious to you at the time, why did you and Tony Blair go out of your way to court both him and the rich oligarchs around him?
I didn't court any oligarchs up. I've got no interest in them and no influence.
You expanded the visa scheme that allowed them to come to the UK.
I'm sorry, Matt, the Tier 1 visa scheme was not to bring oligarchs to the United Kingdom to use laundered money.
I just wondered if the scrutiny was there to look into the origins of their money.
Well, look, if it had ever been brought to my attention when I was Prime Minister, I would have taken action. And I do believe that Keir Starmer is absolutely right to say that the government has been
yeah, it's just, it never was brought to his attention.
far too slow to deal with this issue in the last few years, and particularly even in the last few weeks.
Do you think we now live in a new Europe, a new world of almost permanent insecurity as a result of Russia?
The hopes of 1990 that the war between East and West is over, that is gone. We're now dealing with a president who wants to use force rather than diplomacy, who wants to, if you like, bypass any international institution that would promote the rule of law, and of course who is prepared to go to any lengths, including threatening with nuclear power stations and potentially radiation from them, people that he wants to rule over. But we must try to avoid the continuing bloodshed that is taking place.
It was between him and Tony Blair that the oligarchs were able to invest in Britain. Labor screwed us in this country and fucked us all in the R's. Oh yeah, dude. Tony Blair, who of course famously upheld all of the values of labor. You know, classic. You know, definitely not a deviation from the history of from the history of the Labor Party. Whereas, of course, conservatives and Lib Dems, I mean, they never would. So that's good that you have that take.
Gordon Brown.
Unless you're like a